What up, what up, what up, what up? It's me, L Teddy 27.
Good as night, right about the hood.
Oh, dear God, I'm already eating a drink.
Look a damn mess, just a damn mess. No means no, and yes means no.
What up, what up? What's good, people? What's up? I'm back. It's me, I'm L Teddy 27. You know who I am. I need not tell you. But I am he. I am that guy. L Teddy 27. Now, excuse me, I had to adjust myself. Let me adjust my cap. Y'all see how I be doing all of this random stuff in the middle of these reviews? That's because I love y'all. Okay, I wanted to be right. You would think I would edit this stuff out, but I didn't. Whatever. We're here. This is a review. This is a review because now I'm babbling. I've anticipated this review for a while, y'all. This is my review for Lovecraft Country. This is season 1. This is episode 2. It is entitled Whitey's on the Moon. Before we get started down this road, I have a challenge for each and every last one of you all. Each and every one of you all, I challenge you to tell me where that title comes from. They played the audio of Whitey's on the Moon. Who performed Whitey's on the Moon? When did they perform it? Where did it come from? That's the teacher in me likes to give homework. So that's my homework to you. Get down in the comments section and tell me where Whitey's on the Moon comes from and what the context is. They played the audio toward the end of the episode, and it makes sense if you know where it came from. So I challenge anybody watching the review to tell me in the comment section where that comes from. All right, let's get right down to it because there was a lot. Listen, I watched this show, and normally I will watch a show, take notes while I'm watching it, and then come right out with the review, fresh and raw, right after I watch it. This episode was so good to me. I enjoyed it so very much. I couldn't do it. I had to sit back and take a moment and say, okay, am I smelling the sauce? Am I looking too far into this? So I took a day, talked to my best friend about it. He loved it as well. Came back, watched it again. Loved it even more because I noticed things that I didn't notice the first time. Said, wait a minute, let me step back again. Watched it a third time. Still loved it. So I love it. So let's get right down to it. Let's talk about it. I'm going to try not to make this too long, but we got some things to parcel out. We start off with Uncle George and Letty. Uncle George, Letty, and Tick are at the house, at that big mansion, the lodge, as they call it. But we have stark differences. Uncle George and Letty are, we see this montage of them living the high life. They playing the Jeffersons theme song where we're moving on up to the east side to a deluxe apartment in the sky. Where they're like, oh my God, everything's great. Uncle George got all of his favorite books there on the shelf. Letty has all of the clothes that she ever wanted that fit her like a glove. Meanwhile, in Tick's room, he's sitting there gloom and doom like the world is coming to an end because he's still grappling with everything that happened the night before. We'll get there in a few. Now, we then hear this bell. This bell goes off, and I was like, why is this bell? I swear it sounded like the bell that they ring to have animals come out for food. Anyway, that was the lunch bell, letting them signifying that it's lunchtime. So the pasty white boy that met them at the dough came and he got them and started to take them around the premises so that they could see the place. So the three of them go with white guy, and he tells them about who owns the place, the Brathwaites, Samuel Brathwaite, and his daughter Christina Brathwaite. This is their home. It's actually a replica of the original home owned by Titus Brathwaite, who died in a fire when the original home burned down years ago, and everybody died except for one person who was able to escape. We'll get there later. And he was, said to be very kind to his slaves. As kind as you can be to slaves, because the fact that you even own slaves means that you're not a kind person to begin with. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's just like saying, oh, my mom and my dad both beat me, but my mom doesn't beat me as bad as my dad beats me, but they still both beat you. Anyway, so he talks about, we learn the story of Titus Brathwaite. And Uncle George and Letty, and Tick, they did go out on the veranda or outside on this balcony veranda type deal, and they get ready to eat, and we find out Letty and Uncle George remember nothing of the night before, nothing, and Tick is like, how do you not remember? And they were like, yeah, I don't remember any part. They have no recollection. They don't remember the monsters. They don't remember the abandoned cabin. They don't remember the sheriffs. They remember nothing that happened the night before. And so Tick is like, what in everything that is holy? So they talk about, why are these white people being so nice to us? Why are they letting us, treating us like this, that, and the third? And so they're like, we need to stick together. Whatever we do, we need to stick together, not separate. So they're like, okay, so Tick tells them, listen, we want to go and see the town. All right, we want to go see the town. Because remember, Tick is still trying to find his father. Tick, then the guy takes them out to the garage, and magically their car is fixed. And so the guy says, oh, well, this is how I found it, and I drove it here. I don't know how. And so Tick is like, wait a minute, this car was crashed. This car, there was no way that this car should be in perfect condition. And so the guy's like, that's how I found it, and I promise you, I drove it here. That's the way it was. And I was like, we'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway. So they leave the premises. They don't, and then they start. You see them walking through the town, and they come up to this large obelisk type building. Is Uncle George says the only stone building in the town. And Uncle George later references the fact that those types of buildings are usually for prisons. They have solid basements and foundations, and you can hide things, prisoners and things underneath. And so this white lady comes out with her dogs, and the dogs are, the dogs are really barking and, foaming at the mouth, trying to get toward Tick and Uncle George and Letty. And so the lady's clearly racist, and the lady, is holding back the dogs barely. And so she starts talking about, Uncle Tick ask her if she's the sheriff, and she's like, no. He was like, because this looks like a prison. Anyway, she starts referencing, oh no, we keep the animals in here. And they go inside, they see these pig heads and stuff like that. Keep note, there were hogs hung in there, okay? And she talks about, he was like, well, do you all have grizzly bears? And the lady was like, no, we only have black bears. Those, the blacks, they're animals. They get into things. They don't know how to mind their own business. They don't know. And she's directly referencing black people. I mean, being clearly racist, but alluding to it by talking about black bears. It was a whole mess. It was a whole mess. And so, but the reason that they went over there to begin with was while they were walking through the town, Tick heard the same whistle that he heard the night before. Remember the night before on episode 1, when the monsters were coming after them, there was this strange whistle that made them go away. And Tick heard that whistle again. And so that's when he went running over there toward that stone obelisk type building. Tall. It looks like almost like the building lighthouse. It almost looked like a lighthouse. Anyway, so that's what drew him over there too. And then the lady did have the whistle blowing it or whatever. So, she says she knows nothing about making a sound. Cause Tick asked her, did she make the sound last night to make monsters go away? She's like, no, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know about no monsters or whatever. Anyway, and that's when she goes on that racist diatribe. So they leave the lady, right? And so that's what Uncle George tells Tick, that may be where they have your dad as prisoner underneath there. That'd be a great place. We may need to come back in later. On their way back to the lodge, Uncle George, they're traveling through these woods, and Uncle George talks about how when he spoke to Tick's mom, and how Tick's mom talked to him about her history and her past, and so Tick immediately say, wait a minute, my mom never told me or my dad about her past, but she told you about the past. Pay attention to that. Put a bookmark in that. I know that I done told y'all to put bookmarks in 4 or 5 things, but definitely put a bookmark in that. Because Tick was like, wait a minute, my mom never talks about her past with me or my dad. And Uncle George was like, well, she did. And she told me about one of her ancestors named Hannah, who escaped a fire at, at the slave quarters. Not at the slave quarters, but at the plantation or whatnot. And she escaped this fire and she ran through these woods. And she was pregnant. And that was the only way she was able to escape. And he was like, I immediately remember that going through these woods. And so while he's going through the story, you hear this rumbling in the ground because it's getting dark and the monsters pop up again. So Letty and George see the monsters again. And as the monsters are getting ready to attack them, you hear the whistle and the monsters go away. And so Christina Brathwaite rides up on this horse and with the whistle and blows the whistle. The racist lady from the stone building is there too with the dogs. She's not on a horse. She's walking. Well, after that whistle is blown and the monsters go away, Uncle George and Letty immediately have no recollection. None at all. They don't even know why they're covered in dirt, because the monsters, when they came out of the ground, dirt. They're like, why are we covered in dirt? Like, what's going on? No recollection of what just happened. Whereas Tick does. Oh, I was loving this. Anyway, Christina tells the white racist lady, escort them back to the lodge. She says, make sure Tick goes to her father's lair, and that Uncle George and Letty are escorted to their room. So, but I found it. So I put together that whistle is immediately to make the monsters go away, but it erases the memory. There's a spell or something on that whistle that erases the memory of what just happened, especially when it involves all of these supernatural things. Back down to the lodge. Tick walks into her father, Christina's father's lair, Samuel's lair, and he's there having open surgery, no anesthesia. Some guy done cut him open and is removing his liver. Okay, and he is screaming because there's no anesthetic. It's a mess. He's screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. Uncle George, we then see, is in his room trying to remember what's happening. He's looking at this bookshelf, and he has he sees all this novel. Now he stumbles upon a novel that I'm familiar with, The House on the Borderland. And if you know anything about the author H.P. Lovecraft, who is a staunch racist and white supremacist, The House on the Borderland is a novel that he talks about was very instrumental in his writing. In that novel, the protagonist ends up being freed. The house around it, being freed from the house around him, but he's going in between multiple dimensions, and eventually he goes off and he, dies or whatever, but he doesn't die until after the house around him crumbles and he barely makes it out, and then after he makes it out of the crumbling house, he goes into the other dimension and so forth. And he's being but he was being chased by monsters with hog faces. Told y'all to pay attention to the hogs that were hanging in the obelisk. Foreshadowing here, okay? Foreshadowing. Lots of foreshadowing here. Anyway, when he picks the book off the shelf, it ends up being that same book, The House on the Borderland. It ends up being the trigger for the room. It ends up being like the trigger that opens up the door to a secret passage. And I almost say Uncle Clifford like this, P Valley. Uncle George walks through into the room and sees this secret room. It's a huge room and so forth. And he goes there. There's a book that he finds, which is the bylaws of an order called the Order of the Ancient Dawn. And it's their bylaws. And now, Uncle George is a reader, so he picks up this book, so he starts reading the book. Tick, we then cut away back to Tick. Tick is still watching this guy, Samuel Braithwaite, have surgery. And now he's being sutured back up, and they're closing up the open wound or whatever. Christina Braithwaite is there as well too. And the dad gets up from the surgery table, and they begin to look at this picture, which is supposed to be a depiction of creation. And they start talking about the Genesis chapter 2 story of creation. Now, if you remember, for all my theologians out there, there are two stories of creation. There's the Genesis chapter 1 creation story, and then there's the Genesis chapter 2 creation story. And in the Genesis chapter 2 creation story, we talk about Adam, we talk about the Garden of Eden, and then we talk about how Adam, named every creature and gave them their name and gave them their, place in, so forth and so on. So, Christina's dad talks about it and says he's been waiting a long time to get back to return back to paradise. And so Tick says, let me guess, you think you're God? He was like, no, I'm not God. I'm Adam. Meaning that, I set things in place. I decide where the animals belong in the hierarchy. I name them. I decide all of these things. So many allegories to racism and systemic slavery and racism here in these yet to be United States of America. Christina apparently brought Tick there because Samuel is trying to do this spell and have this ceremony which will allow him to open up a gateway or portal back to the Garden of Eden. And Tick is the conduit by which that can happen. So that's why Christina had him come there to get her dad back to paradise. Samuel then tells Christina to get Tick back to his room until it's time for the dinner later on today, when the members of the lodge are going to be there and they're going to have this big dinner. Tick, on their way back, Tick talks to Christina about wanting to know where his dad is. Where's my dad? I'm still trying to find my dad. He also tells her, why you keep putting a spell on Uncle George and Letty. Tells her to remove the spell off of them and make them remember what happened. And she does. And when she does that, you hear Uncle George and Letty screaming because now all of the memories of what happened the night before and even that day come flooding back in, and it frightens them, and so forth. So then, this little boy, not a little boy, but adolescent boy, runs up to Christina as they're as Tick is about to go in his room, and he tells her, Mrs. Braithwaite, it's time. And she goes running with the boy, and they go out, and Tick goes to his room. They go out to this barn, and there's this cow that's about to deliver a baby. So she goes in and gets her hands in and, puts her hand inside the cow to pull out the baby, because the cow is laid out on the ground, and out pops a baby, one of those monsters or whatnot, and so forth. And she remarks that this is her first time doing this, but she delivers a monster, one of the monsters, out of the cow. It's a baby one though. We then see Tick. We see what we believe is Tick in Letty's room, and Letty. Then we have this, for the remainder of the episode, we have this exposure of secrets. All of these secrets start coming out. All of these secrets. So the first secret we learned about is, it started off, and I really think, if I'm thinking about it, I think when Uncle George found that secret passage, it was like this, metaphoric opening of secrets. Opening that secret passage was metaphorically them all opening up all of their secrets that they had. So what you have is this. Letty is sitting down with Tick, as we see, and she starts to talk to Tick all about her mom abandoning her as a child. And every time, her mom going to church, but really her mom would come back with a different man every time. But one time her mom never came back, and she talked about ended up having to end up in a boarding house, and she's so regretful about that. And that's why she had this strained relationship with her mom, because the older brother and the older sister, the dark-skinned one, they probably kids did have the relationship with their mom, but Letty did not, and she was abandoned by her mom. And so that's why when the brother was going in on her about coming to the mom's funeral, she probably didn't feel no way about it anyway, because of the relationship with her mom. So much was being revealed here. And then Tick says, I'm never going to abandon you, and he starts to kiss her. We then cut away to Tick in his room, and out of nowhere, gunfire starts going off, and somebody's shooting at him, and it's this Korean woman. And remember, Tick went and fought in the Korean War, and she's shooting at him, and he's fighting with her, and he kicks the gun away, and she tries to stab him with a knife, and there's this back and forth, this struggle that they're having, and so forth. And he knows the person, says their name. We find out that it's not real. At the same time, Uncle George is in his room, and he's reading or whatnot, and appears out of nowhere Dora. Who's Dora? I'm glad you asked. If you paid attention, Dora is Tick's mom. And Tick's mom is dead, and she's all dressed up in fancy, and her and Uncle George have this wonderful slow dance to nice music and everything, and talk about how they love each other. And he talked about reading his favorite novel, which was that novel, The House on the Borderland, and about how he tells her the story about it, how the protagonist escapes these hog-headed monsters as the house is crumbling around them, and he enters this dimension, this other dimension, foreshadowing, foretelling his own future and death. Then we are back in Letitia's room, her and Tick, which we found out that really wasn't really Tick. It was, none of it was real. When she was sitting there talking to Tick and Tick started kicking her, it's not real. But now Tick done took off his clothes, baby. Whew, child, I think I rewound this scene maybe 3 or 4 times, because I need to see that body. But Tick done took off his clothes, and him and Letty start kissing and making out, and I think I rewound it like 46 times. Don't judge me. And so as he's getting ready to unzip his pants, a snake pops out. Now, I neglected to tell you, as they were going around earlier, and Tick and Letty looked at this picture, which looked like what was Adam, but where the penis should be, there was a snake pointing, and the snake was going toward Eve. Everything in this show is such foreshadowing. I just can't get to it all. And so when she was having this dream or whatnot, sex with her. When he unbuttons his pants, out pops a snake where the penis should be. Now, they all three realize that they're under a spell, and then you see Christina Brathwaite watching them through this mirror portal type thing, seeing that, you know, the spell that she's put on them is working. Anyway, but the fact that they've now realized that that none of it is real and they're under a spell. So then the young white man who, you know, took them around earlier, the pasty white guy who met them at the door, he comes back and tells them it's time for dinner. It's black tie only. Women are not allowed. So that you can go have dinner somewhere else. But Tick and Uncle George can come to dinner. They got to be black tie. Now, they all three begin to try to discuss these visions or these dreams that they had. And Uncle George was like, listen, they're trying to get us off our game. They're trying to get in our heads. And we can't let that happen. So don't even focus on what you saw in your dream, because they're just trying to mess with your mind. It was so good, so good. Uncle George was giving them a whole lot of good gems. And I immediately in my head said, Uncle George, you're doing too much. You're telling them too much, especially with all of these white people listening and watching. So then at the dinner, Samuel serves dinner. Child, on the plate is his liver. Child, he done served all of the men, a bunch of white men, his liver. Now, these are all members of the lodge. Now, he done served them his liver. Tick tells Uncle George, don't eat that. Because he watched his liver get removed from Samuel's body. Anyway, Uncle George gets up and says, listen, I stumbled across y'all bylaws of the Order of the Ancient Dawn, and I'm familiar with fraternal orders. I am a Prince Hall Mason. I happen to be a Prince Hall Mason as well. Shouts out to all my fellow Prince Hall Masons out there in the world. Anyway, he says, I am a Prince Hall Mason. And I know if you don't know who Prince Hall is, he was not allowed to be in the Order of Freemasonry because he was black. And I would venture to guess he wouldn't be allowed to be in this order here. But I read your bylaws. And so Uncle George says, neither would Tick, neither would I. But I read your bylaws and I found a loophole. And the loophole says that anybody who is a direct descendant of Titus Braithwaite not only can be in the organization, but has higher ranking and status than anybody else. And since Tick is the only direct descendant of Titus Braithwaite, he is a son of the sons of whatever, of the order, meaning he outranks all of y'all. And so after that, he then tells them, Tick gets up and says, I want everybody to leave except for Samuel. He was like, I'm not asking. That's an order. So all the men have to get out because they realize, oh, he got us. And they all get out. Anyway, Tick then tells Samuel, I order you to return my father to me. Samuel gets up and in so many words lets him know, I'm not here for all of the traditions in it. I'm in the order, but I don't align myself with all of the rules and traditions of the bylaws of the order. I'm not here for what Titus had going on. Fuck you. And fuck all of the rules and the bylaws. I'm not here for none of this. And he lets him know, I'm not here for you, honey. And all this power you think you have. Tick and Uncle George then, they leave. And you see them going back to that tower where Uncle George said they thought, the obelisk lighthouse tower type building, where they thought Tick's father probably was. The white chick with the dogs is inside the tower. And she was there and tried to get them. And she wasn't looking. And who comes up behind her and busts her in the head with the butt of a shotgun or rifle? Letty knocks her out cold. I'm here for Letty. Letty is my hoe. That's my hoe. So anyway, they go and they try to, they open up part of the wall to see if they can find out where Tick's dad is. And so then we cut away. We see Tick's dad escaping out of the ground because obviously he done crawled through one of the little underneath the foundation out of the basement. He done crawled out under the ground. And when he gets out of the ground, you then see Tick, George, and Letty there waiting for him. And he was like, I ain't tell y'all to come save me. And he was like, this, that, and the third. Anyway, he's upset that they came. He was like, I can save myself. They try to escape with the car. They all in the car. They trying to get out of there. So then they go through this tunnel. And as they're about to escape the tunnel that leads them out of that town, this force field stops them and it crashes the car. And they crash and they get out. Samuel Brathwaite is behind them with Christina. Letty gets out the car. Bam, he shoots her right in the stomach. Girl, what? Tick is trying to get Christina to help them out and stop her dad. Christina looking like, baby, I don't know what to tell you. The dad shoots Uncle George too. Maybe next thing we see, they back down to he was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll be a part of the ceremony. And they were like, I bet you will. Because he was like, anybody else need to die? So they take him back. First thing we see that I rewound not 46 times, but now I rewind this 282 times. Tick butt ass naked. That ball stretched out wide. That body, they washing his naked body down. And I was like, ooh, took my breath away, honey. And I was just hoping they turned around and zoomed to the crotch area. But no such luck. At least not yet. As I mean, this is HBO. Anyway, so he's preparing for this ceremony or whatever. Then we see Letty, Montrose, and Uncle George in this other room where they're stuck, okay? Tick finds out that this ceremony is to open the door to the Garden of Eden for Samuel so he can go back to the Garden of Eden. In the room where the other three are, Letty is magically healed. Because he was like, well, can y'all at least heal my friends, my family? And so Letty is healed. Uncle George is not. And so in my mind, I was like, well, maybe they're not going to heal Uncle George. Maybe that was part of the deal. They'll heal Letty now, and they're not going to heal Uncle George until after the ceremony is done. And then that's when Uncle George will be healed and they can get out of there. So Letty is trying to figure out how she got healed and everything, but Uncle George is not. So Montrose is over there talking to Uncle George. They have this back and forth. Now, he tells George tells Montrose he needs to be nice to the sick. He needs to do right by his son, this, that, and the third. Montrose wasn't trying to hear it. But in this back and forth, and y'all tell me if y'all saw or heard the same thing, did I not just hear, and then we heard allusions of this earlier, especially when you saw Dora with George, did they not allude to the fact that during this episode that we don't know if Montrose is Tick's father or George is Tick's father? I don't know. Y'all let me know if y'all saw the same thing, honey, because they don't know. Anyway, we get down to the ceremony. They got Tick tied up or whatever. And well, not tied up, but Tick is there. And there's this, they start, Samuel starts doing the incantations and these chants and so forth that he's reciting this, that, and the third. You see this, this field, these, you see the conjuring up of this thing. This force field comes and the portal starts, and all of that stuff starts, and then Tick is in the middle, and this thing, the power is shooting out of Tick and so forth. Real supernatural stuff. Great stuff here. In the middle of this portal opening, you start to see the branches and roots and leaves and vines out of the Garden of Eden coming out of this portal. His ring that he had on, which was the ring of that order that Titus Braithwaite started, also starts to have the Garden of Eden, the vines and stuff come out of it. While Tick is looking at this portal, this door, he gets a vision of his ancestor, Hannah, who Uncle George told him about. And Hannah, I guess he sees that through the power of his ancestors, this allows him to get the strength that he needs to overcome these white people and their white supremacy. Well, that's what it's alluding to, but overpower Samuel. And so Tick lets out this huge scream. And as he's screaming, this like shockwave power goes through the entirety of the lodge. The lodge starts crumbling. Tick, Letty, and Montrose starts to try and get out of there because the house is crumbling around them. As the shockwave is going around, Samuel and all of the white people there, they turn to dust. Okay, Tick gets freed, and Hannah, this image of Hannah, is guiding him out of this collapsing building. Uncle George, Letty, and Montrose are in the car. I have already got out and made it to the car. Tick is running, following his ancestor. Hannah finally gets out, okay? Right before the entire building collapsed. Letty meets him just as he gets out. She takes him to the car. Inside the car, when they get to the car, Montrose is in the car holding Uncle George, who is dead, in the backseat of the car. And then you see, they took me out right here. But listen, they took me out. Tick is like, I'm sorry. That whole thing with me thinking that who's the dad, Montrose or George? He was crying. We got snot bubbles. It's all sad. We love Uncle George. Listen, I was in here crying. I was like, And remember, we talked about this whole entering a new dimension. Uncle George entered his new dimension, but I wonder if now that means that Tick is coming to his own and entered his new dimension. So many things. It goes on from there. We got great acting. We got so much going on here. Y'all tell me, I give y'all a lot of homework for this review. Y'all let me know what y'all thought of this entire episode. I thought it was so phenomenal. Even if every other episode is horrible, this one episode was worth the price of admission. I know I was long on this. I'm sorry, but I had to get it all out. Y'all get down in the comment section. You might have saw it completely different from me, and I like that. So let's get down in the comment section and do as I like to say, good about what we saw. Until next episode, that's all I got for y'all. Thank y'all for coming. Y'all drive safely. I'm out.